Today is Tuesday, March 19th, 2024. The time is 6:00 p.m. I'd like to call the regular village board meeting to order. Myself, Mike Capper is present.
Chris Marino present.
Frank Crowe.
Caleb Garn.
Chris Dubek.
Donnie Kern.
Josh Hackman.
You can stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public comment on agenda items, 2 minutes per person, 14 minutes per topic.
Hi, everyone.
Say your name and your address. Deb.
I'm Deb Kohler, 470 Forest Drive here in Somerset. So I'm here tonight to address a proposal of a dog park in our village park. I'm a community member who spent hours on the committee that looked at our parks, trails, and recreation as part of the CAP process. As part of our presentation, we looked at our existing parks and trails and identified need for improvements and our vision for opportunities for expansion. This vision included the development of a park along the river for the citizens who live and pay taxes in this community, as well as needed upgrades to existing parks. Those of us who have lived here for years have never really been able to use this area with our families, secondary to the environment that existed. We now have a perfect opportunity to realize what has until now only been a vision. We also have much needed upgrades to some of our parks, such as Larry Forest. As part of our presentation, we looked at possible areas to have a dog park due to some interest that had been expressed by community members. We talked at length about the pros and cons of providing one in the village park and asked ourselves the following questions. Is there enough space to have a dog park and all that we were proposing? Did a dog park fit with the recreational events such as yoga, exercises along the river, concerts, family gatherings, walking the proposed trails? We were of the general consensus that putting a dog park in the village didn't flow with our vision for that area. What am I asking of the village board tonight is that you take a step back and look at this with thoughtful consideration from every angle, rather than looking at a piece of land and saying this will work. Has there been enough research? The decision the other night seemed rushed. It wasn't wanted in one place and the village park seemed like a quick solution. How will a dog park fit in this area? And how will it affect the possibility of a future park or other option on that piece of land along the river? It has been said that it could be moved later. At what expense to the village taxpayers? I am asking you to table making a decision tonight to give time to really look at this. I am by no means against a community dog park and appreciate all the time, thought, and effort that has gone into looking at this, but we need to make sure that where it's placed is a good fit for a long time and not think we can just move it when something else gets developed. Thanks, guys.
Anyone else for public comment? Can somebody shut that door too, so it's not so loud when
Thanks, everyone. I'd like to say that I respect everybody's opinion on a dog park in Somerset, and everyone has the right to voice their opinion, definitely.
Could you speak up a bit?
Sure. I personally am definitely for a dog park in Somerset, and I would like to see a dog park at the village park. I do feel that it is a community amenity that will fit in with other people's plans. I have seen the CAT presentation, and I feel like they would be a perfect complement to each other with the trail system. We're at the river area. We're looking at a very small area that I think would be plenty for so many other activities. I do recognize that there are a lot of fears and misconceptions about dog parks out there, and some of those include barking and waste. Definitely encourage everyone to actually visit some dog parks at least a few times. You'll find that barking is pretty rare, actually, surprisingly for many. So I don't feel like barking will be an issue for different activities like meditative yoga classes. Also bear in mind that for big event days, we can close the dog park. Like we've talked about that for Peace Soup days, for example. If we were to have concerts, that would be another day to think about closing the dog park for the day. I would like to offer myself as a resource to all of you and everybody in the community to devise rules for the dog park, to help plan it, to design it financially, and I will be doing a lot of fundraising if the village chooses to move forward. So I'll help greatly with that. We do have plans to have a Friends of the Dog Park to support it in every way possible. And so that will be another asset to all of you. I should hand out these sample rules. You can read them at your leisure, if you wish.
Thank you.
This is obviously not concrete rules whatsoever. They can be adjusted. You'll see, looking at all the rules across the country, there are common refrains throughout them all. But they can be a little bit individualistic, tailor-made for each community, and that's what we would do. We would find the right rules for us. So, again, if anybody in the community has questions, please let me know. I'm happy to help. And if anyone has questions for me right now and there's time, feel free. Well, thank you very
Just
much.
say your name
Oh,
and
I'm sorry.
address,
What was that?
name and address.
Oh, thank you.
That's good.
Katie Bible, 1904 37th Street, Somerset.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Name is Marcus Berger, 328 Aspen Drive. I'm here to bring up an issue that's been going on with drainage on Aspen Street. It was talked about by the board earlier, but no plan has been put in place. And we're going almost a year and a half from first communication with the village about this. We're looking to have the village start to get on the developer gateway to get this fixed. Our yards get flooded when it rains, the water is not drained properly. We've been told that there's plans, that there's, we've had plan sites, everything, but nothing happens. And we are looking for the board to get on this. I was at a thing last week and I heard one board member said that we have to hold these people accountable. When are we gonna hold them accountable? Why are we giving them more building permits when they're not fixing the problems they already created? So we're looking for a solution from you guys to get this done. If it means the village takes it over and gets it fixed, or you hold the developer, we want a plan in place and not just told every month. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming, because next month's will be 10 years. And our houses aren't worth anything because we got flooded backyard. So I would like to pass it around. This is our communication with the village and timelines and everything. I just like you guys to consider that it's time to get on these people to fix this problem and make it right for us living on that side of Aspen Street.
Marcus, what was your address?
328 Aspen.
328 Aspen?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And, we did put it on, for next month's agenda. There's money available for it.
I'll just echo Eric Wood, 322 Aspen Drive. I actually moved in April of 21. So a full year before Marcus came, and the issue I was in Overing home, and they did not put in sod or any, they were responsible for the final grade. I brought up this issue before I laid my own sod. There was some back and forth in 2021, had somebody come out and resurvey things. They said, yep, you should, get another grade. That grade came in, laid the sod, would be assured that there wouldn't be any water issues. Clearly that is not the case. I am the lowest point on Aspen Drive, I believe. And after any heavy irrigation, at least in the new year or definitely the thaw this year, I can't use about 25 feet in my backyard. And I've got 2 little kids. I came back from the western side of Minnesota to raise my kids here where I graduated, place I called home, and it's been nothing but a headache. So echo the same sentiment as Marcus. It sounds like something's coming, but it feels like something's been coming since I started living here. So
Yeah.
appreciate some action.
Kind of off our radar, so this is almost like kind of new.
For sure.
Me anyway, so we'll get on
Okay,
it.
cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Approval of agenda?
This would be the time if you want to pull
Anybody?
anything from the consent agenda, this is where you should do it. Right, Paul? Okay.
It sounds like we should maybe have some discussion as a group about the dog park. Based on the comments. Made here tonight.
You wanna pull the dog park?
Yeah.
Anybody else wanna pull anything from the consent agenda? Going once, going twice? Move.
So the dog park will be, as an agenda item then, just not part of the consent agenda.
Correct. Is
Move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
there a second?
Second.
We should. It would be approving the whole agenda with that amendment, not just the consent agenda
Oh,
items.
okay, well then move to approve the whole amendment,
Mhm.
as amended.
Yeah.
The whole agenda as amended.
Second?
Second.
Caleb Garn with the second, further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Presentation from ISG, discussion, possible approval, facility assessment and space needs report.
Hi,
Aye.
Are you guys gonna be doing a screen share?
we are gonna be doing, we have some things ready to be, and just because I fear technology failing and I love paper, I did bring the presentation, so if you should pass those around, it's the same thing you'll see, but I've been in this room before and it is kind of like, which way are we looking? Who do we look at? I'm Tanya Pierce. I was here a few months back talking with you all about a facility assessment. I lead the government cultural business unit for ISG's, really just kind of spearheading this effort.
Alyssa Campbell, architect with ISG. I was here along with Thad to do the facility assessment of your public works, your police, well, this facility, city hall and police. Also, looked into the space needs assessment for the facility, for the community.
And I'm Thad Daling. I lead our facility assessment team at ISG, so kind of coordinated that portion of the project, leading it into the space needs.
So.
Andrew Daniels with Myron Construction. So we were brought in as part of ISG's team to be the cost consultant for the budgets that you have and we'll see here tonight.
Go ahead to the next slide. So just a quick overview of what we'll be covering tonight. I'll review kind of what the project scope was, what the assignment was. The process overview of what we did, how we went about what we did. The facilities condition assessment, just a brief overview. You all should have received a packet a week or so ago that was fairly comprehensive, 85 pages or so. So we know it's a lot to absorb. We will not be covering all of that tonight. And then we'll get into the space needs study and talk a little bit more about what that is and what that is not, as well as kind of the existing conditions and consideration for a new site and new facilities. And then from there, kind of next steps and where do we go now. So just a quick kind of overview of what when we were here a few months back, what we were looking to do. Really it was evaluating the existing facilities, which is this phase, the village town hall, or village hall, excuse me, as well as the public works building. Does it work for its current use? Does it work for long-term use as the community has grown and continues to grow? How could it work better? What is the condition of the facility? Are there major improvements that need to be made? Just because facilities do get tired and they need to be kept up like our homes and all other things we own. So just all of that piece of it. And then in the process of going through that, we were at a review point and the discussion came up of like, wow, maybe we ought to look at this a little differently. And the discussion of kind of more of a public safety and administration building campus came to light. So that was added in along with the site that the city or the village, excuse me, the village owns. So that was really a broad brush of what we were looking to accomplish in this effort. Our goal tonight is to provide you an overview of all of that, what our findings were, how things turned out, what we saw, recommendations. Really, the ultimate goal is for you all to leave here feeling like you have what you need to make decisions moving forward. who's not fully expecting that you'll leave here kind of deciding, but at least you'll be armed with what it takes to decide. Happy to make this interactive, so don't feel like you need to wait till the end to jump in and ask questions. I may tell you like it's coming, so hold tight, but, so. With that, I'm gonna turn it over to Thad.
Thanks, Tanya. Slide in front of you here is just kind of how we prioritize things at ISG. So the team that was here on site doing the facility assessment included site engineers, civil engineers, architects, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers. Kind of, there's a broader team behind us four that are in front of you tonight. So wanted to look at the priority summary here and just how we came to putting things in different priorities. So how we viewed it. Priority one there is what we consider an immediate need, so that 0 to 2 years out. Priority two is an emerging need, that 3 to 5. And then priority three is anything 6 to 10, or we call them future needs. So during these facility assessments, we're looking at kind of that 10-year window, 10-year timeframe out. And we filter those priorities through the items on the far right there. We look at accessibility, we look at aesthetics, deterioration of the building, useful life cycles of equipment in the building. So all this kind of wraps into how we prioritize things. So just as the site overview, these were the two sites that we looked at, the Village Hall being one of them, and then the Public Works building and site down the road there. So Andrew's gonna talk a little bit about the estimating.
Yep, so after Thad's team goes through and prioritizes all the needs they find on those specific sites, Myron's team and all of this came out of our Eau Claire office, which I manage, but takes that and starts developing the estimates that are baked into the back end of your facilities assessment. So I'll stop and explain this graphic a little bit. And really where we're at is that top portion of the cone you see here. And we're using the historical data, the year after year, and monthly data that we're using within the bid market. So back to this estimate evolution. So we're in that top ring right now, using the historical data that we use to estimate, and really looking at each need individually on Thad's report. And when we get into the space need planning later, we're looking at building blocks or square footages identified. You'll see them kind of shape square, rectangle, and those options later. And you can move those around. They're not set in stone by any means, but we need a square foot to be able to give you an accurate estimate. And what that estimate includes at this point is obviously construction costs. It includes any furniture, fixtures, or equipment that you would reasonably need to then set up and occupy the building, plus fees from a design and construction team and contingency inflation, knowing that you're not going to put a shovel in the ground tomorrow. So meant to be a reliable budget that you can count on here. And then if one of these options move forward, we work down that funnel, get additional team input, start picking out colors, individual spaces, and go through a number of different budget iterations before the project ever bids out to local subcontractors and that guaranteed maximum pricing is established. So that's the entire life cycle. Again, we're only at that top rung, but I wanted to explain the whole thing.
Quick question, how do you
Yes, sir.
determine the inflationary numbers on here then? Is it based on a certain time frame?
Yes, so about a year out.
Just a year?
Hypothetically, the fastest you're probably gonna go if you walked away from tonight and decided on an option is probably a spring of 2025 construction. So we've
These
accounted,
numbers are spring of 2025.
correct. So we've accounted for 6 to 7%. You know, historically, we look back 30 years and it's always 3% between 2020 and now. That obviously went way up as high as 21% in a given year. It has settled back down, so 7's reasonable moving forward. And when you see the different budget iterations, it will be line item. There's a line for inflation that says 7%. So if nothing goes up, we don't use it, it goes back to the village.
So if we said 2025 is not gonna work, what if 2026, we have another 7% built in?
Should be a little over 5-6%. We see it trending down, but yeah, it's anyone's guess. We're not fortune tellers, but that's
Right.
our reasonable estimate right now. So then I'll touch on this slide for a second. After our estimator goes through and develops these budget, we like to look at how Thad prioritized them and show you it in a different way here. And what this shows is the priority number one, you got about 20% of the needs here for public works, priority 2, 77, priority 3 being the smallest at 1.73. So what that tells us is you're at a good spot in planning, right? That if you remember that priority 2 is 3 to 5 years out. And I just said the fastest you're gonna go is start construction in 25. You have a year plus to build, depending on the option chose. You're in that 3 to 5 year window by the time you're operating the building. So you're in a good spot to decide whether to stick funds into your existing buildings or go a different direction before you're forced to make that decision because your building's just aging out and needs to be repaired.
So the next slide here, we just picked out some examples from that long report that Tanya referenced that you guys all have in front of you or had a chance to chew on it a little bit. So just wanted to touch on a few of the items that we saw for existing conditions. And we start out here at the Public Works building. Building was built in 1991. It's what we call a pre-engineered metal building. We always start kind of on the outside and look in. So I'll start you on the site portion. We observed some drainage issues with that site. Our civil engineer looked, there's no catch basin or underground drainage. Everything is a surface drain, kind of goes through the entire site. So you see evidence of that in the next slide. There's a bunch of pictures and you'll see some of the degrading of the asphalt and some of the other stuff that goes on with the outside drainage. Going back up, sorry,
Bob, hasn't a lot of that been repaired? No, but repaved a lot of that.
Well, the paving's been done, yeah.
Okay,
That doesn't solve the drainage.
right, okay.
So then looking at the exterior of the building, notice the overhead doors are more than likely original to the 1991 construction. You can see evidence of those pictures of heavy corrosion just from the environment that they're in. You know, you get heated shop, cold outside, you're dragging salt trucks in, plows in. So we saw some evidence of some deterioration. Same goes with the swing doors or man doors, whatever you want to call them. Those are your access doors for us to get in the building. Saw the frames and the doors themselves really degrading. On the mechanical, electrical, plumbing side of things, the building does have a current exhaust system, but it does not have any automatic gas sensing devices, so it's all a manual. Nowadays, we're designing those to have sensors sense that CO level and flip the exhaust on automatically. So just another safety thing to think about. Shop heaters, the only heating supply is by the overhead heaters. And just like a lot of these pieces of equipment in the buildings have a life cycle, and we're just kind of at that current life cycle for a lot of this stuff in the Public Works building. And then noticed when we were walking around, no LED lights, so the space is pretty dark in some corners, so you can imagine it'd be hard to work on equipment or see things, so. We are seeing LED lights kind of take over that high bank lighting way of doing things now. So just some general photos we took while we were walking around. Again, yeah, there's a lot more. We took probably between the 5 of us on site, well over 500 pictures. So we just tried to pull these examples out for you guys to view tonight. So back to Andrew on the budgeting and breakdown here of Village Hall.
Yeah, so real brief, similar as the last slide you saw, is a majority of those needs are falling in your priority 2, putting them at the right time to be having this conversation before, that 3 to 5 year window hits. You have to look at making a, potentially $600,000 investment. Is it right to do at Village Hall, or is there a different option you want to explore?
So just some of the highlights we pulled out from this building, notice that some of the roofing sections here have some age on them, just like everything else. Everything's got an estimated useful life. So there's 5 different roof sections here at this building. So the section over the oldest building is the oldest roof section here. And that's getting to be the end of its useful life. The windows here to the south of the building that provide natural light for the offices are getting old and failing. We saw evidence of some moisture intrusion into the building on our walkthrough. So just that made our list as well. Same thing on the site, some damage to the parking lot and just some of those accessible routes you use to get to the building. The accessible parking stall has some slope issues with it. They need to meet those accessibility codes, need to have all the slope taken out of it. On the mechanical electrical side, 2 furnaces serve this building, one in the basement, one above the vault right here. Talking with staff, looking at the equipment in site and installed, it is coming to the end of its life cycle. Staff has told us that it has a hard time keeping up on those warm summer days. We noticed dehumidifiers put up when we were on site, so that tells us we have sometimes a humidity issue. So some new mechanical equipment could solve that. Lighting made the list here too. We've got some lighting that's been updated throughout, others that haven't. And then the interior finishes, so think your floors, ceiling, walls. A lot of it in the back here is kind of at the end of its life. It's worn, it's dated, it's seen a good life. It's kind of run its course. And then the last thing we'll touch on here is the accessible restrooms, and that's something Alyssa noted when she walked through with just the overall layout of the restrooms here. Some of the fixture heights, doorway entrances just don't meet that accessibility code. And then the pictures are on this one, in this building. So that's kind of the existing conditions and what we looked at as a team when we were here earlier this fall.
We're doing a pretty big chapter break, so maybe a good time. Is there any questions on any of the actual facility assessment piece?
Was there a part where you guys assessed the fire department? Was that part of this
Or
or not?
not part of it? No.
Okay,
We didn't do an assignment, no.
that wasn't part of any of,
It wasn't a part of the initial assignment. We
Okay.
got into space needs and how much space they would need and some concepts for bringing together. That is where they got pulled in. So it wasn't a part of the initial assignment to look at, is that facility still useful? What needs to be done to it? So.
Okay.
it did
did
not-
we pay for that service then? Or did we?
Not for the fire department.
We did.
No, it was added in as a conceptual piece. Can we conceptually bring together a public safety building was how that got to be. It was kind of that. A lot of the trends we're seeing across upper Midwest and actually nationally is that public safety all comes together. It makes sense from a taxpayer standpoint. You're utilizing, one space. So there's a movement for that. And as the conversation went, it was like, well, what if we brought everything together? So then it was kind of like, okay, well, let's look at that. So Alyssa will get into it a little bit more on the difference between kind of space needs and concepts, but essentially it's what is the space that each entity needs? And then now moving it to the site and putting it together in sort of a Lego fashion, block diagrams, like how could it fit on this site? So we have the one site people we're working with. We can take space needs and apply it to other sites. We have one site, so. Wanted to get into demographics a little bit, which I think sets the stage for, okay, why are we looking at all of this? In addition to the aging facilities, what is it that is exciting and growing about Somerset that we should be mindful in considering what we're doing with public facilities, right? There's no doubt you're growing. We can come from Minnesota. Oh, there's 2 of us that came over from Minnesota. The joke is that everybody's moving to the west side of Wisconsin. So there's certainly a migration over to the west side of Wisconsin. We're looking at the demographic detail that you see here. And again, there's more in the report that you received that outlines it a little bit more in a little bit more detail. By 2040, we're looking at a population of roughly 4,100. Certainly affects, so that has an effect on every aspect of village services, right? But in different ways. So public works, it's affected by streets and what it takes to manage said streets and roads, right? So that's number of pieces of equipment to manage said number of roads, needs a certain size of buildings, depending on what you want to put into it, right? So that's sort of the formula there. Police and fire is different, right? Like that, they manage more by population than they do by roads, obviously. And then administration spaces also are a little bit different and they don't probably ebb and flow quite as much. So those are just things to consider as we look to, okay, what size of space is this gonna take? In all these different areas as you look ahead to how far out do you want to go? Do you want to look? Certainly what we're looking at has short-term fixes and short-term implications, but we also have provided long-term, so.
Okay, so with the space needs, portion of this, what we did was we looked at what you have currently, the facility assessment that was done. How that space is functioning, is it still functioning, can it still function? Does it serve its purpose and what's needed in addition? With Public Works, the conversation was, you need cold storage for Public Works for the off-season equipment. And really your facility as it sits now, the pre-engineered metal building, it functions for cold storage, right? If you took the employees and staff out of it and you just stored things in it, the envelope keeps things dry, keeps things temperate, it works. Where the need comes in is that the space is not necessarily conducive to maintenance, to storage of your the equipment that's being used on the regular for that season, for where the employees are working, the amenities, offices and lounge and restrooms. So what we're showing here is, in addition to the square footage that you have, that if you allocated that strictly for cold storage, and granted, there's some things that need to be addressed, right, site-wise, rusty doors, things like that, but as a whole, that facility still works for cold storage. Then in addition, what's needed is what's showing here. So it's an additional 5,600 square feet. It's providing garage space for your vehicles. It's providing a wash bay and a work bay, maintenance shop. Currently, some of those numbers that were shown, and I think your estimates get into this too. You would put that money, instead of repairing the trench drains, for instance, in the existing building, you wouldn't have to repair those trench drains because you're not draining anything anymore. Now you put that money into the new building to provide adequate trench drains. So that's kind of the conversation and how we landed with the 10,600 square feet of space needs. So this is broad. Total space, sorry. This is broad, high level looking at it. If you moved forward with the project, we would get into the details and the nuances of exactly what vehicles you're storing and how many in future. We're taking into account an assumption for future storage as well as the vehicles you currently have. But we would dig in deeper, right? So it goes another level deeper. This is high level. So if you move on so then City Hall is another conversation of looking at the space you have currently in this building, how it works, conversations of how you'd like it to work better, and then the needs, right? So there's a council chamber, there's storage, there's restroom. There's the courtroom. When it says courtroom, it means like all the amenities that go with that, right? You have a courtroom, you also have a court space, you also have offices adjacent to that. So that's all accounted for in that rectangle. And then the offices and what would be the public space, right? That band in the middle is the public space. So this is, again, broad scope of the needs that we heard and what is needed, and that comes to 4,700 square feet. Police department, same conversation. This includes future conversation with as the community grows, how many vehicles are you going to store? Do you want to store them outside or inside? Well, ideally, you want to store all your vehicles inside, right? So this is ideal solution for what the police are looking for and what they need to serve the village down the road. So with all of these items listed, we end up at 10,000 square feet. That's including storage, weapon storage, ammunition storage, shared workspaces, public restrooms, locker rooms, fitness or training areas, evidence storage, dispatch and briefing room. And again, broad scope. If you move forward with a new police department building, these things would be defined. So what we did was taking that information and that knowledge. Our next assignment, if you will, was, is there use of this building we're in now? So we've done a feasibility assessment on it. You have a number of what it would cost to maintain this building. What police are outgrowing it, it doesn't work quite well for how the city hall needs it. So what would it take to make it work for either of those entities? So our first two options are looking at that. What would it take to make this work for police? We look at that. What would it take to work for city hall or the village hall? We look at that, but in both of those cases, that would mean one of those entities would need a new building elsewhere, in which case we rely on the previous space needs scope to give Myron square footage, which is what they base their numbers on. So if you wanna move forward. So in this option, this is showing how it might work out to maximize for the use of the police station. However, I would bring this up right away. This is only 6,500 square feet. And if you remember from a space needs assessment, ideally, police had 10,000 square feet, right? So it's only showing a garage for 3 vehicles, which means they're parking 3 or more vehicles outside the garage. And that's an addition. And that's an addition to your existing space. So if you look at the opportunities and the constraints, right? The opportunities are you're reusing an existing building. It's location, right? You can't duplicate this location. If this location is critical for response times, that's kind of something you can't, unless you go across the street, you're not gonna duplicate it. There's already infrastructure and utilities here. And again, the proximity to the town and the community. However, you're still dealing with a aged basement that has issues. You're still dealing with the roof and all the repairs that we talked about. There's inefficiencies just in layout and the cost of demoing walls and reworking this space, which would have to be done while they're still here, which is another thing to keep in mind when you're talking about repurposing this. You could always build the admin and move them, right? But then when it comes to the police station, that there's gotta be phasing considered, so it's not a quick fix. There's costs associated with that. Option 2 shows what it would be to rework this space to function more effectively for your admin. And in this case, it's almost more space than they need. Again, the number on the space needs assessment was 4,700, and this is more than that. So it works for admin, but it's more than what they need. So it's obviously a not efficient use of space. And again, you're still dealing with opportunities and constraints because of the existing building. Option 3, you're gonna be like, this looks like your space planning, and that's because this is what was needed for that new public works component. It provides adequate space, efficient layout. It's new mechanical and electrical systems, so you know that they're gonna function as you need them for those uses. It takes into account vehicular flow and site, and then the constraints again are the drainage conditions, which you would address with the feasibility study. So after we presented these things, then that's when it was raised, hey, we have this property. Oh, sorry, I'm skipped. This is how this public works would sit on the site adjacent to the existing building. So the gray box is where the new would sit in proximity to the current, what we would then use as cold storage. Now, move on. So
How would that work for drainage there?
So the drainage, if you see on that, south side of the parking, there's that black line. The black line would be used to divert the water. So right now, when you're coming from the road, the slope, it just drains and the water comes straight into that building. So if we put a retaining wall in, we can divert the line of water to avoid the buildings.
With some site modifications that come with the new structure on the same site.
So after presenting those solutions, that's when it was raised that there's a potential for a site large enough to accommodate, and what would it look like if we combined, EMT, EMT, police, fire, and the city hall all on one, hit 'em all?
Yeah.
All on one site. And so we looked at two different concepts. And they're merely, one, they're looking at two different ways of using the site that you gave us. And the site restraints kind of force us to look at the building two different ways. So in this first option we looked at, it was knowing that the intent is, what's the benefit of putting these pieces together, is there are some shared functions, right? There's some commonalities between police, fire, EMT, where they all have a training space that they use, but do they use it 24/7, or could they schedule it out and maximize use of that space, right? That's a large amount of space. Locker rooms, it's not, you know, obviously you need more lockers, but the showers and those things, right? You're making use of those on more than just one entity. So those shared spaces, sleeping spaces, kitchen, break room, storage, those common spaces are then shared by these entities. So in this case, what we looked at was an L shape so that the common spaces are in the knuckle on the second floor. So that, and then you'll see it on the site, but it allowed for drive-through bays, so drive-through apparatus bays and drive-through police. The EMT is not a drive-through, but that's why this configuration is the way that it is. He was looking at trying to keep those common spaces as close to all three entities as possible. The separate structure, the gray box, is the city hall. It could be stacked on as a third floor option, but we're showing it on the site as a removed building, but in that site, so it's shared parking. So if you scan down, you see how this could possibly work on the site. When we looked at this concept on the site, what we started to notice was, as a response, emergency response vehicle, you're kind of back in the neighborhood right now, right? You want to get on that main highway to get wherever you need to go quickly. This puts you back in the residential area, not necessarily ideal. So what would it look like? And part of this placement was, hey, there's a lot of trees on the site. Maybe we want to save those trees and keep those trees. We don't want to tear them down. That's cost. That's, you know, everybody loves trees. But what would it be if we pushed it to the corner? So if you move to the next one, the site depth requires a long linear building in this case. So back to that comment I said about wanting to keep those common spaces close to everybody, you kind of lose that opportunity going long and linear. You also lose an opportunity of drive-through bays because we don't have the site around it. But you do get everything on one level in one building, and you move it closer to the corner. So if you scan down one more, in this case, your emergency vehicles are right there at the corner and they can get out and get onto the main drive right away. So that was again, just why there's two concepts, was looking at, there's costs associated when you shrink the footprint and go up, because you have elevator and you have stairwells, those are additional costs. But going this route, there's site costs and there's other things that are restraints because of the location. But these aren't necessarily like the only options. These are just the two options we explored. We can understand there's a lot of different ways to go about this, right?
And a lot of moving parts within that, I think is the other piece. And I think I'm just gonna point out too, what we've seen with other public safety buildings is there is a component of police and fire coming together. Like there needs to be a moment of like, does that work? Does that work? Can that work? They're currently not. Can they come together? Right, so that's a thing. And certainly something to pause and be reflective on and be mindful of.
For option 4, for shared spaces, there's no square footage listed there. What is the?
So,
shared spaces.
in the report,
Could you flip to that other one that?
Travis, how many square foot do you guys currently have?
I don't know. I just said, about 8,000 sound right?
I mean, you know? 7,000 square feet. Six.
Go to page 69.
So in both 4 and 5, the square footages, the blocks were the same. So, right, we determined what was, and I should back up and say that for the fire department, our numbers were based off of a few things. They were based off of a shared email of their list of equipment that they have. And then it was also, our looking at our past fire departments that we have done in our office and just using that kind of existing information to base the assumptions on. So,
So I have a quick question.
Yes.
So as I look at this, we have option 1, 2, and 3. Ultimately, we're going to need to do all options 1, 2, and 3 eventually. So really, we need to add 1, 2, and 3 together at some point, right?
well,
'Cause we're gonna-
option 1 is. Option 3 is its own thing, right? That's your public works. That one eventually will need to be addressed. Option 1 and 2 are whole in themselves, right? Option 1 is City Hall addressed as a separate building and the police taking over this. Option 2 is the police are a separate building and the City Hall takes over this. So it's 1 or 2 or 4 or 5.
And 3.
So you're
So if I
doing,
wanted to do all of them, I would add together. If I wanted to do them all separately, I could do 1, 2, 3, or I could do 4. And then have all
I would say if you want to do it all, you're gonna choose
3 or 4.
1 or 2 or
And
5.
But three's gotta be in it.
3.
One
3
or,
is your adamant.
1 or 2 plus 3, so you pick 1 or 2
Yeah,
and add
three
3
is,
to it.
three's a standalone, that's public utility
Yeah,
needs.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so everything else, no matter what, three's gotta be in.
Correct. But you don't, but other than that, is you're only picking one other number. You wouldn't pick.
Option
and
1,
2.
2, 3, or
1, 2, 4.
I'm sorry, 1, 2, 4,
Yeah,
or
we
5.
made it real easy for you. Yes. And to the numbers thing, it was, yeah, it's on there. So 5,000 square feet roughly for shared spaces. And then it's 7,000 square feet roughly for police and 12,000 roughly for fire. And that's like,
Yeah, one more
that's
time.
not right.
Say that one.
It's on this sheet.
Yeah, but I'm looking for the shared spot there.
So the shared number is the 5,000. It's like 5,400.
That's
thank you.
City Hall.
That's shared spaces.
50.
No, I don't have that. Yeah. it's on
Option 5.
I got it.
And then 7,400 for the police.
So same for 4.
4 and 5 should be the same. They
It's
should be
they're
using the
configured- they're
same
just
components.
configured differently.
Yep, they're just being mixed around.
How is option 5 cheaper than option 4 and the fire department has 5,000 more square feet than option 5?
So again, the document that was sent 3 weeks ago, is that it?
Yeah. So there was
Was
a
a
error.
typo.
Yeah, there was a typo.
So your square footage for option 4 and 5 should read the same.
7415.
Yep.
Right. But I will let Andrew discuss
The cost differences.
the cost.
Yeah, so did you talk about, you want to touch on the shared spaces, just reiterate?
So again, well, I think we covered, so your shared spaces are your bathrooms, your locker rooms, your kitchen, your training center, workout, lobby, circulation, like all those numbers are, that's all part of that shared space component.
So from a configuration standpoint, you have enough site to do it. We would tell you until you get over a certain square footage and you're not there yet, it's cheaper to build on one level. Some of the costs that Sherry went over with elevators, stairways, extra facade to go up. What's that?
And ongoing costs for that too.
Correct, especially when you talk about an elevator. So it's more efficient if you have a site until you get over 50, 60, 70,000 square feet to keep it on one level.
Yeah, with option 4 and 5, obviously it would be great to have an EMT here.
And I would reiterate, just like I said with the previous space plans that we shared. I feel confident that the needs for those facilities are in that total number. if 1,000 square feet comes out of this one and pool and goes to this, you know, like, if that 5,000 number for common space is more than we need, but police say, hey, we need an extra 1,000 for this, you know, that's where
It's fluid.
that's where you pull, right? So this is a broad brush stroke. But giving you an idea of what it would take to fit all those facilities.
If we were looking at option 5. And you have the fire department in there right now, under option 5. Is that? Because right now. You have the fire department in option 4 and option 5. Is that subject to something where it could be built out at a later date? Or is that something that has to be built in on this proposal?
Fire specifically,
Right.
a majority of the spaces you could shell, right? You could create a white box, a gray box, depends how far you want to take it, is create the, walls of it at a different time, so. Yes is a short answer.
The answer is yes.
You would not have to build it all out right now if you wanted to get the shell for it.
That's what I was, you're looking at, you're putting the square footage out there on something like that, but at the end of the day, you're trying to kind of carve back costs, because right now we have a joint agreement with the township.
Yep.
And so, yeah, we put something like this up and we don't, have their say in any of this as well, so.
Right, so what we would want to do is at least take it far enough that we can validate the square footage and the space planning inside. Is it a big box? Does it need to be rectangle? Get a floor plan agreed to before you put it on a shelf and agree to shell the space. So that in 5 years, whenever it becomes appropriate, at least that plan can be pulled out and say, this is what we thought back then. Is it still right, or do we need to tweak it a little bit?
Does it make a lot of sense to have everything on this side of the river for public works when we're kind of building it over in that area, or is this something to think about, maybe having like some cold storage here and cold storage there, or is that not feasible?
That probably will work the best. And then, it's a public works facility, so we have stuff outside that doesn't look very sightly, so
Right.
that's why we kind of elected to be where we're at, so we're not
And they are,
barring the surrounding
Sure.
development area.
Sure, I didn't know if like up by where you do the compost and stuff like that, if that would be someplace, maybe put up a shed or something at some point in time for that or not, but.
we have a client right now that's fighting the neighborhood thing on a public works building. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
It's a real fight,
Oh, sure.
not in my backyard.
Right.
So do you want to flip back to the costs or the slideshow from today? You went through 5, correct? So if you go to the next slide, please. There we go. And maybe this goes through each option, lists some costs through it. And we kind of got the high level of that. If you could go one more, it should relist the cost. And this will help explain some of what Alyssa said earlier, but also start to show you how you can move those pieces around. So option 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 all listed there, and then their individual components of each different scope. I'll start at the top and just pick option 1. So if we went and tackled all those facilities assessment items, you have that 781,000. But if you chose to go with the entirety of option 1, you're agreeing to renovate that space, so that budget in the red at 561 acknowledges the fact that as part of that renovation, that's facilities assessments item will be addressed, so you deduct that 561 off of the top number. So you want to make sure we're not double counting it as we go through and come up with that $5.4 million total. Similar approach for option 2. And then option 3, 4, and 5 become a little more simplistic. And at least the budgeting and how we got to that number. So you had some good questions earlier. Any follow-up questions or different questions based on how we're showing it on this slide?
If you were to take option 4 and add the city hall to that building, how much would that bring the price down? Yes. I don't see a
The
need.
economies on adding it in versus keeping it separate. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Can you restate it? So if we took option 4,
I think you looked at that at one point of putting the city hall on the third floor. Like, so it's just one building, that you have one structure instead of a separate structure. Just
Third floor.
separates it out.
Wrap around the. Guess the top part there.
Yeah.
generally it ends up being pretty similar. So we did write the option. I don't have the exact number offhand. I can follow up with it. But you're adding an elevator, you're saving foundations and a flooring underneath. So in that scenario, it came out similar.
Okay,
But I could follow up with the exact number.
but if adding the city hall to the ground level versus the third level, which seem very accessible.
Yeah, I would not recommend a third level on the site you have in the village of your size. Land is more or less plentiful, and you're not downtown Madison, right? There's no need to go 3 levels.
Yep.
It creates an accessibility issue.
For sure.
Would the plan be for the town, so then the town hall and the village hall, will that be shared space for us as well, since the fire department's gonna be moving, or? No,
The town hall is there.
town hall would stay there.
They're there. You guys are just trying to. Well. You come in.
So the common question now is generally, can we afford this? And I know Josh.
I have one question for you. Did you see the EMS coming this way? For a spot?
So they're building a new hospital in Stillwater. And you know where the routes more, where they're kind of pay now. They'll actually eventually move way down 36. However, they did studies as well, stating that their response time is something that will not change other than far north of 35. So, I was just telling Lenny, the one thing, we pay 0 for their services.
Yes.
Many municipalities pay for that service. We have 0 costs. They
Right.
pull paramedic program. I mean, it's crazy that we get that, but we do. The run volume wouldn't have to go, because when they added onto the clinic, that was a conversation I had then, of putting a bay in over there for them, to do that then. They said, no, it just wasn't gonna be worth the call volume. Things are changing in the, community in Richmond, whether or not, as Hudson went down and Lake became the Hudson, there's a possibility of that happening in other communities around here, and anything can change in the next 5-10 years. I mean, we don't know. So it's hard for most public safety agencies of the fire EMS side to stay afloat and operate with that, trying to do the bare minimum, keep costs down, and they just can't do it. That's why you see a private hospital ambulance is coming in and replacing them. So could they be here? Absolutely. It'd be perfect in between St. Joe, Somerset, Richmond.
Generally, if you look to make that type of move, you're gonna bring in those partners and have, let's say we narrow in an option that includes fire EMS. You'd wanna bring in those partners to vet it out before you kept walking down the path.
Sure. Thanks, Travis.
Hey, Josh, we would go with option 3 and option 5. How do we pay for it?
All right, so now the rubber's gonna meet the road. I have paper copies. Does anyone want them, or we could just share it on the screen? I still feel confident in sharing things on the screen.
That way you can measure them.
Yes, sure.
I'll take one.
I'll take it as well. Thank you.
All right,
So thank you very much.
See that I have a slightly different than the ones that we just looked at. I think I might have been going up an old version of the report, but I think it still basically speaks in the same direction. Do you guys want to have this? I got a bunch of copies, so. Okay, no problem. All right, so the first page is kind of the summary of all the options. So some of this is a combination with what we already heard. And some of the recommendations that Bob gave me when we spoke about it throughout the week. So the first one is the new Public Works building at 2.2, which is basically the same scope that you already heard. Option 2 is remodeling Village Hall into police station and then build its own new separate admin building, right? Number 3 is option 2, plus adding the Public Works building. 4 is remodel Village Hall into an admin building and build a new police station. And then 5 takes that, adds its own Public Works building separately, And then 6 is the shared public safety and admin campus. So as I just mentioned again, the numbers are slightly different than what you just saw. We're still gonna be basically telling the same story though, okay? All right. So between this slide and the next one is really just what it would cost to finance each of those as 20-year notes obligations now moving forward. So just laid each one of those out as simple as you can, basically level payments with taking those project costs, adding on top of our normal financing fees and all that to get you to a bond issuance. In this case will be notes. It's a separate issue, but there's legislation, so we basically won't use bonds anymore in the state of Wisconsin. Not really important for this conversation. We get down to financing for it. I'll talk you through all about it. But if I accidentally say bonds, I actually mean notes. It's gonna take me a while before my vocabulary changes over, okay? All right, so option 1, that's just the standalone public works building on its own. Annually, the payments for that are gonna be somewhere around 167 to 171 per year. Option 2 being remodel Village Hall into police station and build a new admin building. It's about $395 per year. Option 3, remodel Village Hall and police station, build admin building plus public works, gets you to about $560. And then, great. Option 4, about $584. There's no public works building involved in that proposal. Number 5 is the same as option 4, but does add the public works building. And then at the top, option 6, $20 million is a shared public safety and admin campus altogether. And the total annual payment for that is about 1.5 million.
What's option 6?
That is the shared public safety and admin campus, right?
Does that get a new public works too?
No, it doesn't.
So no public works on 4 or 6, right?
That's correct. So it's 1, 3, and 5 get the new public works buildings. Okay, so this next slide shows your overall general obligation borrowing capacity, right? And so general obligation borrowing is the bread and butter of debt, not just in Wisconsin, but throughout the country, right? This is based on property tax collections. It's what almost all of your debt for public improvements goes for outside of revenue debt. So it's not water or sewer related. So in your streets, almost everything you've done to date is general obligation. That's what we'll almost always use because you get the lowest rates for it because it's backed by property taxes. As we've talked previously, when we've done other borrowings, the state limits your use of general obligation borrowing to 5% of the village's total equalized value. So 5% of your total equalized value, around 440 million, gets you about 21 million in total. So that basically gives you 1 through 5 of our options, right? Number 6 goes above your existing capacity, almost with that project alone, not even including any of your existing debt, right? I would consider this to be financially infeasible. Since you can't even use geo debt for it, there are alternatives like CDA lease revenue bonds, but these all have program restrictions on them too. You can't just use them. They're not as broadly accessible as geo debt. In addition to that, you have to put it onto your levy limit worksheet. And I don't even think you guys have capacity, certainly not for adding 1.5 million to your current levy. So with geo debt, that's an exception to your levy limit, which allows you to add it to your regular levy. So I don't think that a $20 million borrowing is actually currently within the village's options. You certainly need to see a lot of growth happening over the next, 5 or so years before you're going to get up to that point. Probably 5% growth for the next several years is what you'd really need to be able to fit under a capacity limit if we went up to that level. So for the next couple of slides, I'm really just going to focus on 1 through 5. And I think that those are really the most pertinent that you're going to be looking at. Okay. Okay, so this one I really wanted to think about what this would look like if you went through options 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and what that would look like for kind of an average property owner for a residential property here in the village. So just moving left to right, what we have in 2024, I just want to give you a sense of what your current levy is right now, your current mill rate. And so for that amount of excuse me, so that implies your current operating, right, and debt that we have for this year. The mill rate is $4.78 per thousand. The average tax that you have for a person with a $350,000 property is about $1,674, right? So again, this is based on the equalized value. which might be a little bit different than an individual person's assessed value, right? The equalized value allows to see, the overall property of the village and kind of use that rate and then spread it around for everyone who's actually living here. For a specific person, their assessed value for their property might be up or down, and then have to compare that to your equalization ratio, right? Without getting too far into the weeds, I just want to let you know that that is the current estimate. We shouldn't expect a person who has a $350,000 property to pay exactly that, because there are a lot of other confounding factors. But I think the point of this slide is to just, again, tell the same picture across all these different options. You can compare them when we're looking at just the debt. So really what I'm trying to do is strip out all the extraneous stuff so you can really focus on what is the impact of options 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if you took on that as debt, and how would that change it compared to where we are now in 2024, okay? So that first row that we see, 2026 payment, is basically the first line of each one of those debt service schedules that I showed you a couple of slides ago. So you can take that number, plug it right into there, and then it flows through the rest of this, right? So what we did, there's basically two components of your levy, right? There's your operating, which is staff salaries, materials, utility costs, all those kind of things. And then there's the end of the shop that I usually live in, which is your debt, right? So for all of these options, moving into 2026, we kept your operating levy the same, okay? We also didn't change the equalized value, which in turn changes the mill rate, right? So I wanted to keep all of those the same. So between 2024 and what we see in option 1, holding operating the same, we're going to add that debt payment for your new debt, and that holds your existing debt is the same too, going through there. So your total levy in option 1 jumps up to 2.1 million, right? And then the estimated taxes for that are going to be 1,812, an increase of $137, okay? I'll just stop talking for a minute and just let you absorb the table. I don't need to talk about every square, but just take a second.
And Josh, that's the village taxes?
Right. That'd actually be a good thing to hold under assumptions there, just village taxes. I don't know what the county's gonna do. I don't know what the school district's gonna do, or that college is probably negligible.
There's not any assumption of growth at all in.
Right, wanted to keep that the same.
So. Yeah, if someone's come to us with a proposal, they're hoping to fill 138 homes in a very aggressive manner over the next 5 years. What if that would come online in the next 5 years? How would that affect these numbers?
I mean, that brings all of them down proportionally the same, because if we assume, I don't know.
I agree with
5
that
million.
statement, but
Sure.
I mean, if you're saying medium homes are 375,000, say 350, right?
Right.
You're adding another $3 million to the tax rolls, right? So that would proportionally, I mean, kind of quick math, give you, what are you looking at on something like?
Yeah, I mean, we've got the equalized value right now, the TDOT value is 440 million, 400, let's just say 400, right?
Right.
But let's say there's 100, 100 new homes, give or take, at 400,000 apiece.
Let's say 300,000.
Sure.
That's 3 million, right?
Right, I mean, that brings, let's say each one of those goes down 20%. So instead of a $137 increase for a specific hypothetical person, let's say it goes down to 110. Something like that.
And one thing to remember.
I'm not holding you to the numbers.
Right.
That's in the TID.
Right. Oh, that's right, that is it.
So those tax dollars aren't going into the pot. They're going back to Capstone.
It's very true. So in 20 years, that will be helpful. Actually, for Capstone, probably less than that, but.
That's a good point.
I mean, we can certainly bring back other models. If you told me, Josh, you want to see something else at 3% for everything that doesn't include Capstone, I could do that for you. I think though, if what you're trying to get a sense of is, do we want options 1, 2, or 4? This brings these all down at the same scale.
Any of this able to be paid for under a needs assessment? Any of this able to be put forth in a needs assessment,
You
the
mean,
charge on the new homes?
I don't think that that's available. to
Impact
be
fee?
On the
assessed.
impact fees, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, a new police station probably would be, not for an admin campus. I'm not sure how far you guys got with the impact fee assessment.
We're right there.
We're still there.
That's why I'm asking if
Okay,
any of this is something that can be, set aside for, talking about impact fees. And if you're saying police, it could be police and fire.
yeah, I think
And
the
then
police and fire
we
fees
could
is
kind of
big.
carve that portion out and say that would drop the cost down a little bit anyway.
Right.
On the
Right.
admin aspect of it and where we're at.
Yep,
What about the utilities? The
Um,
shed, utility shed,
in terms of, an impact fee,
yeah.
yeah, I don't think that that's one of your eligible impact fees at this
No.
point. No, we're doing, it's streets, it's transportation, fire, library, police. There might be another one in there somewhere, but. Yeah. The next slide might also be helpful too. So this is really taking your levy projection, takes your current debt, then adds the 5 options on top of it. Where you are now in the bottom left, 24, 25, that's your status quo, right? That's everything that you have to date. And then you can see how they all scale up, and then when they all kind of taper down. So your levy is pretty flat for the next several years and that's how we structured it when we did the bond issuance last year. We kind of wrapped it around to have it fit in with that same schedule. So this is kind of the shape that you have right now. So when you layer on a $10 million option, you can see what your debt levy goes up to in the first year, 2026. Should be known that, going back to, a couple slides ago, the operating levy is still, that's the real main chunk of what you have to levy for every year, right? So your total levy right now is 1.9 million. And then option number 5 gives you a almost $750,000 payment. So that winds up then becoming a very large chunk of the village's overall levy. Right now, that's a pretty small portion of your levy. So the more expensive projects you layer on top of that, the balance really starts to shift. A $2.2 million borrowing is still a pretty small part of your overall levy if you put that on it. If your only need was a public works facility, which of course it's not. Right, so there are a lot of other things to have to think about when you're trying to tease all these through. What's affordable right now, going back to the 1 to 2 year time frame, the 3 to 5 year, and then the 6 to 10. It's not really my job to help you assess like how that fits in. I can tell you, but just by looking at a chart like this, where your debt starts to fall off, and then how you can start layering on your other costs on top of that. But it's really not my job to tell you, to fix the peeling paint and the garage doors that are not working anymore.
What's a typical level of geo debt in terms of the 5% cap?
Really varies on the size of the community. And really, part of it is a wealth of the community issue. I think in terms of size, Somerset actually has a pretty good amount of value relative to the amount of residents who live here. Certainly a $375,000 median home is a pretty nice base to be starting from. So that drives your mill rate down. If you could take a similar size community, same amount of residents, same facilities, same streets, but the houses are worth 250,000, that makes their mill rate up a lot higher. So you're kind of negotiating this already from a position of strength. So a lot of communities ask me that question, like how much is our debt compared to other places? And I think you really have to think through what's your cash position, how much of your budget every year have you spent doing capital projects and not had to borrow for? That's an important factor. You guys have historically not had very much debt up until maybe like, I would say last year even puts you in still, I don't know, maybe like a 30th percentile in terms of communities I talked to and how much debt they have on, and that was with that new $4 million borrowing. So I would say relatively low amount of debt, particularly when you're talking about a community of the value of Somerset.
So if we were to take the police out of the equation and looked at that as an impact fee and said that we would be doing the administration and breakout, we already know what the public works, cost is. But if it was just, I don't see those numbers on just the administration end of it, so I could put that, kind of task you at what that would be saying. What would the number be to do the admin, and we look at, the police and fire under the impact fees.
Yeah, I don't have a
You
scenario
know,
for that.
The police under impact fees.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have a scenario for that. I've got mostly bullets.
We got 7 million on the village hall admin and new police station, but there's so I don't know what portion of that is the police.
So if we start to pull apart options, the admin from option one is listed at 3.2 million.
Brandon,
Say that again?
If I look back at option one that we presented, the admin building was 3.2 million in there.
Under option one?
Correct.
So 2 million for the police?
Remodeling into the existing space.
remember there was one and two were sort of opposite of one another, but you look in that building, so.
What was that?
Option one was reworking this building for police, so the line item for admin, is in the admin, so you could look at that number as a standalone on that. And then option two was looking at reusing this building for admin, so the police number on that would be the standalone police.
Thank you.
So basically $137. And if that's 2.2 million. So we'd be looking at a little better than 50% increase in that to get the $3 million. And this is just quick numbers where I'm throwing at you here. That's going from 2.2 to 3.2 million. Because option one is the 2.2 million.
Yep.
So that's 137. So if you're going to 3.2 million, it'd be about a 50% increase.
Yeah, you pick it at like, where's that, sorry.
So we're looking at about
167, yeah, about
190,
250, something
about
like that.
$190 a year. That would get the.
Yeah.
That would get the admin done and, you could potentially push the, if it's agreeable, push the police over to, needs assessment. Or impact fee, I'm sorry.
You're not
Yeah.
gonna pay for the whole police on.
I didn't say all of it, but
Right, no, that would be my concern, I don't know what you'd be
Because that's
pulling for
gonna
that,
be per new home that's gonna go in.
Say $1,000 per new home would go towards that.
right?
Right.
Maybe a portion of your annual debt service could offset that, but it's still gonna be a pretty significant chunk on a multi-million-dollar borrowing.
I forget what the size of the library was and what that cost, came out of it, but that got done in that, under the needs assessment too. There was, both things in it. I'm just looking at all the options, thinking out loud.
For sure, I mean, we can run it in whatever way you want, out of this meeting, you wanted to twist the Rubik's Cube around a little bit more and say, we want this, but not that, and add in this other thing, Bob can shoot me an email, whatever, and say, Josh, run us a schedule for that, and we can update all of these, that doesn't take long.
I don't know if anybody's ready to take any action. And definitely.
I mean, and all these are projected to even start to issue next year. So, take the next 9 to 12 months to ponder, and then, we can figure something out.
Thanks, Josh. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice work. Anybody else have any questions while they're here?
Do you want this on April's agenda?
Yeah. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great presentation.
All right, we'll talk soon, thanks.
Thanks, John. All right, let's move right into the What was taken off the consent agenda? Use of,
You can approve everything on the consent agenda except that.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda except with the exception of E1, I-1.
Frank, 1 second.
first and second, further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Alright. Use of North Village Park as dog park and purchase of gates not to exceed $4,000.
So I guess I pulled it off, just based on the comments. I was a little hesitant at first, for the dog park, just because of the reasons that were kind of brought up. Based on what she said, we did kind of just find a spot on the map and kind of put it in there. So I guess I would just want to hear what the rest of the board has to say, or want to hear your thoughts on what you think about the dog parks, and if you have any input.
So I know we spent a lot of time too, also in the background. Brandon, you and I met at LaGranger. We also went over and you proposed potential spot over at Veterans Park. And I met with Caleb. We did walk through all of those parks and looked at those different areas. The only thing that
Did you
really
ever
has,
get the assessment from, did we
Pardon?
ever get that presentation from the CAP, or did,
the CAP,
where
the
did the
survey,
CAP have it?
the survey, CAP didn't have a dog park per se, other than on the survey, it come up as the highest percentile of there was a dog park, right?
In the CAP presentation, we had put it in the Veterans Park on the very far end, not by the houses, not by the residential area. We
Which-
had it on the other end.
Which far end?
So it would be, like if you're coming up past the senior center, it would have been at the end of that road on that end by the pavilion. That's where we had proposed it.
Right next to those apartments there, off of, that'd be HUD?
Next to
Or
the
Jermaine?
road that goes to the ice rink,
Okay.
the non-road road.
How big of it, how big a size was that?
You know, we had really, when we put that dog park into the presentation, it was really in response to the survey that had been done. There had been some interest in it. So when we were doing that CAP presentation, we said, okay, how could we make a smaller dog park work here? Because if I remember right, the numbers weren't that high for interest. And so, we had come down and spoken to Bob and just said, would it be feasible? Could we put a dog park on that end? Because as we were working on the village park, we did not really see in the layout that was there that would really flow with that and work with it. So that's where we had put it.
Okay. So the proposal, Brandon had suggested putting it on the side by the, it'd be HUD that runs along HUD there. And that is not necessarily a bad idea. I didn't think that was a bad idea. The only concern from a couple of the residents that raised over in that area was that, with the children playing in that park, that there could be potential for, kids interacting with the dogs, So I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. We looked at putting at Village Park because it would conflict at LaGranger with the disc golfing. And unless there's, really, we're trying to find a place and a location for it. So size wise, we're looking at it was recommended by the Parks Department to have it at LaGranger, but it conflicts with the disc golfers. So at some point, we have to look at what's the issue with it being at Village Park on that far north side. Where it would attract people to that area. It was recommended by a couple people that spoke on it. So I guess I'm okay with wherever it wants to go as long as we get one.
Can we, so I know there has been discussion of Parnell Prairie, and I know there's a disc golf course out there already.
Well, we asked the town and the town was not in favor of it.
What was that at a joint meeting?
At a joint meeting. We asked them about it and they said they're not in favor of it. I think Lenny's here too on it.
I missed a couple of them.
Yeah.
How
But-
big is a plot is recommended for a dog park?
The one that is currently proposed
Or like, just for the size?
at LaGranger, it was a little less than an acre.
Yeah, there's not a lot of.
All
There's a lot of property out of Parnell, that front side is. real.
I don't disagree with Parnell,
I mean,
but,
but that's,
we have to get an agreement by the town.
Well, I mean, it is
Yes.
half, how does that work if it's half ours, half theirs? If we split it, do we
Well, if they don't
got?
agree to it, you know, they're not gonna, you know. Anything that gets done there has to be agreed by both.
Right, I've never actually been through one of those where we've actually had to vote. Do we just vote as all of us together? And if we have a majority between the town and the village, we put it in, or?
You'd enter into an intergovernmental agreement between the village and the town to create and maintain this park, this dog park. And it would be, the terms of that would be spelled out in there, where it is, who's gonna pay for it, ongoing maintenance, all that.
But the other thing is maintenance and getting, you know, people, you know, stuff out there to trim, you know, equipment out there.
Or I mean, we're gonna have to be out there for some amount for the disc golf course, help maintain that out there.
I would say Village Park is definitely out of the question. I don't think that's enough room for any dogs to be running, let alone one dog to be running, so, and parking and that. Yeah, I think that's not a great spot at all. So
Okay.
I think you should Village Park. Veterans Park, looks like there's a great spot right on the north, right along HUD, kind of running, it's kind of goes in a triangle along,
East of the pavilion.
yeah, east of the pavilion, well, north of the pavilion. This area right here, north. So it runs alongside the ice rink and then HUD, then come across by the pavilion there.
Okay, that's north.
Yeah,
That's northeast.
that was kind of where I had,
Yeah,
that was where I had suggested.
I think if we're gonna put it in the village, I think that'd be a great spot. Obviously with the blessing of the neighbors and stuff, but usually the dog parks I've attended, with my dogs and stuff, it's usually not a lot of commotion. There's, you know,
The
hours
residents,
associated with it and all that stuff. It's not open during the night or anything like that, so.
the residents there, I went door to door, knocked on every one of them, and like I said, I only had one gentleman, you know, question it, and he just said, what about children? And I said, well, it's gonna be fenced in, and I don't think that, you know, the owners have to be there. He said, well, that's the only thing I'd be concerned about, but otherwise, everybody else was receptive to it. So I don't have a problem if you wanna put it at, I don't know what the size of that spot is, but I'm sure it's well over, or well close to an acre.
Yeah, that would be another thing that you'd want a good size, but that's not too small because you don't wanna have to throw the city of Hudson under the bus, but their dog park is very
Small.
It's a sad thing, so very small.
Yeah, that's the other thing, if we could enter into agreement with the town, that, I think that.
And that would be
there's a lot of
fantastic up there.
Space out there,
Yes,
and there's parking, and there's already a pavilion out there and stuff like that.
yes,
And
that would.
there is enough room where you can keep the disc golf and the dogs separate.
You guys are talking about different parks, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think-
For, talking about.
Yeah.
Prairie Preserve.
Parnell Prairie would probably be the most ideal location.
So as a
Not even in town.
You don't like
No,
what,
it's preserved.
okay,
Dogs don't belong there, not a big fenced in area. The disc golf already took away a lot of that nature, so I don't think that's a good idea at all.
At LaGranger, what's the biggest hang up on LaGranger?
well, so people are gonna be walking through the throwing lanes, and then where it was proposed is a spot in between 1 and 2 and 3, and discs pretty much can go in there from all 3 holes.
All inside the park?
Yeah, and you're rocking right across one long. And it gets busy up there on the
Sure.
weekends, like the parking lot's full, pretty full up as it is already, so.
I'm perfectly fine with it being at veterans. I know some people said, oh, well, Vets Park that's for, you know, kind of for veterans, but you know, hey, what more, you know, I mean, when I was all canvassing in the area, talking to people, there was people walking. The only bad part about Vets Park is there's really no way to walk. There's gonna be a lot of traffic up there, and there's no sidewalks or anything to get to that park. You know, like, right here, everything's gonna be accessible, walking down to it or driving down to it. And, everybody else will be, you know, they'll be parking right there, so. I think you'll see a lot more people walking on the roads in that area to access the park from within the village limits here. if they're within walking distance.
Joe, I'm going through, what are your thoughts?
The only thing is we're going through a new comprehensive outdoor recreation plan right now. And we'll survey people as part of that. So it might be helpful to find out what people's opinions are based on that document. The one we have was done in 2017. So they need to be reviewed every 5 years and updated. That's my thought.
When does that go
As soon as Public Works is done, decided on the questions. So, the other
In
thing,
in the last one, what was the dog park?
It was-
High percentile.
it tied 42% with walking trails.
42%.
Yeah, but pickleball courts were way down. And I think
Mhm.
if you repoll, those would shoot up quite a bit. The only thing I would caution, if you put something in Vets Park, the Hud Street's a dead end. So if you're gonna start generating traffic, that's going to probably not be a popular thing to get in the street.
That's why I went down and talked to them all.
Yeah.
I said, you're gonna see a lot more traffic coming down here if that's the case, and I didn't get any real opposition to it. That, from the people that I talked to, which was over 50% of the people on that road.
Bring it back to Public Works and then more discussion?
Well, here's what I'd like to do, at least get the approval that we're gonna get a dog park, and the location, stuff like that can be tabled and brought back to committee. But I'd like to at least approve, because we've already kind of allocated and got the funds for the gates. So let's get the gates approved, and I'm not married to whatever. If people got major concerns, I say bring them to the Public Works and let's talk about the area. If we had another location that was more, feasible, we'd be like, yeah, that's great. I'm just acting on, and I think the committee has also been acting on the fact that it was part of the core plan, and we were trying to do with the residents that filled out the deal, and address the dog park issue. So I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of the gates not to exceed $4,000 for a dog park, and table the location of the dog park to next month's committee meeting of Public Works.
Second.
First and second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you, guys. New business, discussing possible approval, quality molding expansion, transferring. Here's you, Bob.
Yeah. I would jump down that.
And everything else was on the consent
Oh, it's
agenda.
okay.
Oh.
But then I black out for a minute. So in your packet, you should have one or two exhibits, maybe just one, with a brief email to Tasia. Just requesting us go on the agenda. So Quality Molding is interested in expanding. We own two real small parcels that once were the location of our lift station in that area. That has since moved. So it's excess land that the village probably doesn't have, the size of it's not a whole lot, but this would benefit Quality Molding. And it would also benefit us because we don't have to maintain that area any longer.
It would generate tax revenue.
It would, yeah.
Not much, but.
Well, the.
How big are the parcels?
They're small.
But the expansion, but them being able to expand, or what kind of expansion are we talking?
Their facility wants to expand.
How much are we talking, like doubling? I don't have it.
But
That was a question, and then I brought it up to the owner.
Yeah.
Do you just want to deed it over to them, Bob, or are we gonna charge them, or what?
That's the conversation I had with the owner was, I said, well, I don't really want to pay for it. And they said, understandable. So I said, I'll bring that to the board.
Does he have any concepts of, what he plans to do for expansion there that
He
that
does.
he's looking to get those 2 lots?
He doesn't have a conceptual plan. This is, potentially a new business moving into the community, looking for an existing facility, which they already do business with Quality Molding. So the conversation between the 2 business owners was, well, if we expand it here, we're already doing business together. And apparently they agreed on that.
And because it doesn't look like there's a lot of land right there on the front there that they would be able to, like, you know, have that to
It's
give them the
more
right
of
to expand.
the egress and getting into, you know, potentially a driveway location coming into that property. So that would.
So accessibility.
What
They
if-
agree to commit to something in exchange for the land, or are they gonna commit to something before the village agrees to just give them property?
They haven't, as it's seen right now, the village is willing to entertain that before we got into too far of a conversation, but we had about 3 years ago tried to just give our well 4 location, to the business owner, simply because, you know, we have to mow it, we have to maintain it. And, in my eyes, it didn't serve enough. It was probably a 50 by 50 chunk of land. And, that created all kinds of problems with our sirens, our emergency sirens on that location, so, we just said, forget it, we'll keep it.
This guy's looking for 60 to 90,000 square feet and bringing 50 some employees, and I'm all for turning it over. I don't know about anybody else.
No, it's great. They want to expand and stay there.
It would be too if they want to stay here, but then like you say, is there gonna be like a
I'd be
certain amount of
interested.
jobs bringing into town?
We had the same kind of deal with Egan Woods where, you know, they were gonna expand and never really kind of materialized, and we pulled that where they were gonna put so many workers on, right? And we ended up, when I first got on the board, we ended up having to, you know, ixnay that because he was just at where he was at. And, you know, is there something like that we can do for this deal and saying, hey, if you're looking to expand?
You can make a transfer of property contingent on, you know, the village board approving an expansion.
Yeah, I mean, if you got an expansion and there's gonna be a couple jobs or 5 jobs on the deal, I'd be okay with something like that, because at least we know we're getting something out of it, not just the tax base, but also local jobs. If he's willing to entertain and, he can make a commitment to bringing jobs to the area, you know, bring it
Yeah.
forward.
I'd be totally for that,
Yeah, as long as we have that contingency in there.
so,
For sure.
bring a certain amount of jobs or something.
Do we need a motion, or? Bob, just go tell them we're amenable.
You know, I can meet with them and say, you know, the village would agree to deed this over to you at the time of.
Or contingent on, if they want to, you can do a contingency deal, right?
Yeah, you can enter into an agreement with them, you're gonna do this and we're gonna give you this land.
Right. They pay the attorney fee.
The way I'm looking at it,
I'm
it's
just kidding.
tiny amount of land that's worthless to the village and worth something to them. It's a good faith gesture just to turn it over to them, because it doesn't do us any good. We can't build anything, do anything there.
I agree. It ultimately costs us money.
Right.
Yeah, so.
I agree.
I'll make a motion to, deed that property over to Brian Weeder and at Quality Molding.
I'd second it.
First and a second, any further discussion?
Or are we gonna put a contingency on that?
No.
I thought we were just talking about putting a contingency on something like that.
We were, and then we talked about it's worthless to us anyways and costs us money to maintain it. We have a first and a second, further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign,
Nay.
motion carries. Discussion possible approval, ordinance amendment 2-3-10, building inspector, plumbing inspector, heating, ventilation and air conditioning inspector, electrical inspector.
So the ordinance you have in your packet is, as it currently reads. There should be a document behind that. That kind of outlines the amended proposed amendment, and then it's also listed on the agenda, the proposed language change.
And really, the change is currently, it says that the building inspector shall attend the meeting. The change is building inspector shall attend meetings of plan commission of village board on request of the village president for the plan commission chair. So it's not mandatory attendance at all the meetings, it's upon request.
Wouldn't that be posted too on the agendas of the need for the building inspector to be in attendance?
Yeah, you could, but I would notify him.
Hang around.
Well, I just want to make sure that we,
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise he shows up and says, well, yeah, I was notified, but if I wasn't on the agenda, then he wouldn't, he could read the agenda just like everybody else. I think we talked about that in finance and said that the agenda, that they would be willing to put on the agenda, the, inspector to attend, and then it would be legit.
Do you think that that needs to read that way in the ordinance? Or
It would help.
policy?
It would help, well, policy or, I guess, in my opinion, if you're gonna, put it forth, if they're saying building shall attend meetings, of the planning commission or village board at the request of the village board president or planning commission, or shall attend meetings if on the agenda to attend,
I think the agenda portion, what we had talked about is just that we'd notify him by the time of the legal posting of the agenda. That way, it would give him enough time to.
There's by no means he needs to be here every one.
No, and when it went, it was like $250 or something per meeting to have him show up or something like that, so.
so it'd be just by request of the village president or planning commission chair, they'd have to send an email to him in order for him to legitimately claim that he's supposed to be here.
Look at a timely manner.
I don't want him to show, them to show up and say, yeah, I'm getting paid for this meeting.
Well, you would have to show that he was notified or contacted by us.
Right. Okay.
Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve, ordinance amending chapter, title 2, chapter 3 of the municipal code.
Brady Crone, second.
First and second, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Discussion possible approval, growing wings, change order number 1.
Right, well, I'll attempt this, since Chuck's not here. There's a $3,798.77 increase to the original bid of $252,000. This was, we added a length of sewer main to go past the manhole for future expansion, just to add on. Otherwise, we're probably gonna get into a driveway, and it was gonna end up adding a driveway replacement. Sure. To make that connection, so that was a field decision at the time. So that's that change order. That's for your deliberation.
And does that went underneath the road then? In the culvert, was that where that was?
The sewer main?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we would have gotten into the depth there, we would have gotten into that driveway more than likely.
So doing it now, we saved a bunch of money to period,
Yes.
correct? Very good.
Long-term on that road there, what are we thinking on Parent Street or, what, I mean, that's not our road right now?
That's not part of this discussion anyway.
Got it, right.
So I'll make a motion to approve change order number one in the amount of $3,798.77.
Chris Marino, second.
Donnie's with the first, Chris Marino with the second, for the discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Discussion possible approval, Growing Wings pay app number 3.
It's just the partial payment application number 3, the amount earns $13,217.68 there.
Isn't it 25,170?
Yeah, with the 5% retain, that's getting to the 25, yep. So the amount due 25,170.
That's their total, that was the total retainage, right, that we're gonna pay off because everything has been satisfied. I think that's what, we just didn't get to that point, so then there won't be any more with Growing Wings on that after this.
There shouldn't be.
Right, because
That's the way I understand it. too,
Yeah,
Danny.
okay. So I'll make a motion to approve pay application 3, the final pay application, amount of 25,000, to Growing Wings in amount of $25,170.71.
Brandon Crowe, second.
Donnie with the first, Brandon Crone with the second, further discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Discussion possible approval, recommendation of reviewing building inspector fee ordinance and the agreement with the building inspector.
I'm kind of looking at my in my packet for the email that was sent, that out to all the trustees on regards to the differences of, pay for all the different, scenarios that I sent out. And you have that, right?
I did not put it in the packet because my understanding was that the request was to have an agenda item for you guys to recommend reviewing all of that at some point at a meeting. So if I misunderstood that request, then
So I'm just looking at, I received an email from, Western, it'll be Western Wisconsin Inspection Agency, did a comparison. Tony had sent out a comparison. We received that one as well. And on that email, I asked Asia to forward that to the board. That was basically, I had asked, if he could take a look at the different scenarios and come up with that, and he did. I'm just trying to track that down. But in that scenario, in every one of them, it was either, there was 3 different inspection agencies. There was, Tony's current inspection agency and the price for that home and that, building, that building permit. And then there was, Alcroy, and then there was, Western Wisconsin. See the fee schedule? And what come out of that was that, Tony rates were extremely higher than the other ones in all areas except for, I think, one. And Alcroy was not low on all of them, and West Central wasn't low on all of them. But we as a board had just approved, changing an ordinance to, reflect the fees of this new agency, new building agency that Tony has, and I think we need to revisit that because there are much better, building inspection agencies out there that are much more reasonable, or Tony needs to reflect those prices and, we changed the ordinance to reflect that it's a fee schedule and not actual ordinance. That way, if there's a change that needs to be done, we don't have to make an ordinance change. I would be, I did also talk to, the administrator for Osceola, who has, he actually lives in this town. And, I ran into him knocking on doors and we had a long conversation about that. And he shared with me that I said, how is, Western Wisconsin, inspection agency, to deal with the contractors in that area, and they've said we've had no issues whatsoever. So Devin, the administrator of Osceola has, offered up that they've come highly, without any regard. So I'd be actually willing to look at that if the rest of this board would, but I'm more concerned about the fees at this point in time rather than the who's doing it. I wish I had those in our packet. We table this discussion until next month and put that on the agenda, or do we handle it, or can we handle it here today?
I'm just curious, the comparison that I sent out, I don't see that I'm high on a lot of things.
Yeah, and some of those that you had done were not correct, on that other,
It's my fee schedule, I know what we charge.
No, I'm talking about what other people are talking, so we're charging.
Well, I see they added electrical more per number 11 on ordinance, which number 11 on the ordinance is commercial electrical, which we include the electrical on our permits.
We, table this for the finance meeting maybe, so you guys can go over this in more detail.
I think that's great. Yeah, I'll second that.
Brandon Crowe make a motion to table this till the finance meeting.
You got first, second, right, Chris?
Yes, ma'am.
First and second, any further discussion?
Just one question on that. I'm perfectly fine with tabling it till then, but we got an, ordinance that's sitting out there right now. People are going to be stepping into that ordinance and, within the next month. Is that something that would you be unopposed that we have a finance committee faster than our normal finance committee to deal with this? And
We have a special meeting.
potentially, I mean, I'm more concerned about people that are gonna be, there hasn't been any this year that have taken out building permits, but the new ordinance went into effect, I think, right close to the first of the year, if I remember right.
Then we'd have to have a special board meeting to change it.
That's my only concern. Is that, or are you okay with,
I'm fine with getting finals that month going by.
So I have a question. So you guys approved me in December to get the new building inspector. Then in January, you approved the fee schedule. So I'm just kind of curious and we have it signed, the new fee schedule. So I'm trying to understand what we're trying to get to here.
well, I'm saying that it was passed, that you were the, signed fee schedule and everything like that, and we got an ordinance, but we can change our ordinance.
Well, we got a first and a second, further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, we'll go to personnel and finance. Discussion, possible approval, brush clearing by Totes My Goats LLC.
So I went back to, Logan, and re-quoted this, because really the goal of this is twofold. One is to get some of the buckthorn under control. And the other one is to draw people to our parks and get more use of our parks and hopefully make an event out of it. So, we did go back and I said I want to cut in half. Doesn't show on here, he didn't update the graph or the land plot, but it'll just be half of it. So which brought the cost down, roughly half to $4,142. So like I said before, it isn't all about just getting it out, getting all of the buckthorn out as with mechanical means or as cheaply as possible. It's about maintaining the park up there as it is. And I think it was a good idea to take this back and get it re-quoted. And then we can try this out this year, see how it works out. And potentially if we want to move forward with it, we can, or we can come up with some other types of solution for getting the buckthorn under control.
Two questions. One, who holds the liability if these goats decide to bite one of these children that you
Yeah,
propose?
he's LLC, so he's insured.
So we're not held liable at all for this since it's on our property and we approve this?
Well, they hold the insurance, the liability insurance.
Okay, question two, do we have the funds to pay for this?
Yeah, so basically, it came out of Public Works that we have roughly $30,000 to spend in our budget. And we allocated roughly, we divided it roughly 10,000 to each park. And with the goats and then also the purchase of the signs, we're well under that 10,000 mark. And we're also able to utilize some of the money that was raised. So there was roughly $380 raised through fundraising. So that will go towards this as well.
And I guess question three, sorry,
No, you only have two.
the owner, does he suggest allowing people to pet these goats or have people come see them and all that stuff, feed them, whatever the case may
Yep,
be?
it's fine to interact with the goats. Yep, and we can also, we can close those holes for that week as well, if we decide we do wanna do that. But yeah, it said they had no worries. It came up to the site with me, so they had no worries, doing that. I actually do have two proposals in here, so one was from Totes My Goats, the other one is Goats on the Go. And he kinda had the same, he said, there really no concerns, obviously discs are gonna be flying around and they might get a goat, but he said, no, they're pretty hard headed. And said they'd be fine, they'd love to get the visibility on it, they love the idea.
So there'll be 1,000 feet of electric fence netting around it, so
Yeah, whatever half of this is, yeah.
that would keep the kids away from the goats, right, if it's a electric fence netting.
That's my concern.
There are paths in there that they will be able to get in there, so he does have switches that you can go through it, and you can go into the area. Which we can decide that if we do wanna let them in the area, or we can close the hole. We have had those conversations, Chris is here from the disc golf course, guys, and, they said they'd be fine with helping close off holes if that's necessary. I think it might just, as a precautionary measure, probably is a pretty good idea. And we can put that up there and say, hey, stay off these holes until
I think
this
we
is
would pull
done.
all the baskets in that area, I'll play kind of close to it or through it.
Oh, yep,
For however long, we just pull the baskets and note it.
Well, it's 1 week.
good idea.
Yeah, so I mean, but I mean, we would be advertising that, hey, play disc golf with goats and try to get people out to the park. To unique experience.
So New Richmond used this clearing method on the corner of A and whatever that main road is, you come off the freeway.
Sadler Nature Center.
Yeah, right above, it abuts, I think it's Paper Jack Creek. And the undergrowth is still clear after doing this 2 seasons ago. It looks really nice, and when they had the goats out there, I was amazed at how much traffic was in the area. People seem to love to go visit the goats and hang out and do the whole thing. So it was quite an event. It was interesting, and from what I can tell visually, at least on that land, has done a very good job at its intended purpose.
How many goats are they gonna send out there?
I think you'll have 20 goats out there. I do have photos of the goats that will be brought out there.
I'm not really interested in looking at photos of the goats, but I do have.
Outside the meeting.
Couple of questions. The last sentence of that page 3 on, toads for goats. I just read through that and it says, this excludes negligence on the owner's part from personal pets. Now, we being the owners of village, right? Or other owners controlled incidents which equipment or goats are damaged, lost, as well as outside injury to persons or damage to property are considered under the owner's control. So if a dog gets loose and goes in and wrecks one of them, that we're liable for that.
I can ask him specifically about that instance.
I'm concerned about that end of it. The other aspect you and I talked about was how are we gonna protect certain underbrush that we don't want, like the pines and stuff like that? They're young pines. How are we gonna be able to protect them from being, eaten? Well, they're just sporadic here and here, that's, so.
We could pull, if we want, we could, I'm sure Ken's here as well. He helps out on the disc golf course. I'm sure we could pull some of those ones we're worried about and put them on the line. So somewhere down in the future, we would like to get a line of trees along, LaGranger there. So to have like a shield for the neighborhood. So I mean, we could try and we could pull some of those trees and replant those, the ones that are in the middle and the ones that we saw were on the edge where we could keep the fence away from them.
Okay.
I would be more than happy to go out there with them when they're
I'm
pushing the fence.
concerned about, like, we got little saplings coming up. And there's an opportunity for them to be taken out with the rest of the stuff, if we can protect those.
Yeah, we can, I don't know if he didn't say specifically he said they eat anything that's green.
Mine's green.
Yeah, so I imagine they eat that too.
A neighbor of ours had them there, and they eat everything. And they also could climb trees pretty good.
6 feet over there.
Paul, what would we need for the village to be covered for insurance wise? A copy of.
You're gonna wanna get a certificate of insurance from them, showing they have insurance, and
Up to a certain dollar amount.
I'm sure they have probably $1 million coverage if they're reputable. And just name the village of an additional insurance. Well, it wouldn't be any different than any other.
Right, that's what I just.
Do you see any reservations with that clause in the, as you read it?
I don't think that would mean that the villages would be responsible for every dog in the village. Or anything like that. I mean, it's written more for private individual.
Right.
Obviously, but I don't think that would extend to everybody.
There are a lot of unleashed dogs that run around, right?
What's that?
There are a lot of unleashed dogs running around the Ranger.
Yeah.
They run across and playing disc golf. So, I mean, you guys do have a city ordinance that it has to be leashed, right? So I mean, it's not your responsibility that the owner of the dog is breaking the law.
One of these is for 3 acres and one for 7.
Brandon, I got a question. On the unit price per acre, you've got goats by goats at $1,175 an acre.
Yep.
And the other one, goats on the go, is $1,000. So I'm just curious on what made you select over the other one.
There really wasn't. They're both easy to work with. I kind of felt like the Totes and the Goats. I don't, maybe it's just the name. It might just be the name.
One was easier to get to fill.
Oh, yeah, and the Totes and Goats has baby miniature goats. That's why.
So the goats on the.
And they sent you photos, right?
I did, yes. It's a very effective marketing campaign.
So they suggest 7 acres, 50 goats for 4 to 5 weeks or until the job is complete. So why is such a big difference, I guess?
I met the guys up there and talked about the goats and what they would do as far as being an expert on their, I am not.
He's gonna bring 20 goats for 1 week and the other one's saying
50 goats for
4 to 5, even though it's double the price, double the size of what he's expecting, but he's also much cheaper. I kind of, all about trying to save a few bucks, I mean, we're gonna, you know, cause we
Well,
can
the
go farther with that.
The difference can be covered up, the difference
We can
is
get
covered by
we can
the,
get 4 acres
how
for
about the
that.
difference is covered by the 380 of that we.
Well, I'm saying that we get the 4
got from the
acres
Donations.
on the goats on the go, when the other one, you're only looking at about 3 acres, so we're getting more acreage done.
How about we approve a certain dollar amount and Brandon can figure out which one he wants to go with? As long as they have suitable
Second.
insurance to cover the village.
Second.
What's the dollar amount?
But in doing that, you're also knocking out one of the competition on that, if you're just gonna leave them at a certain amount of money. His funds are at set level, he's gonna end up hiring the cheaper person. We don't know that we're gonna get a better job from a cheaper person. Second question, what are they proposed holds that we're doing this on?
1, 4, it would be 4, 5.
4, 5, 6.
Yep, 4, 5, and 6, where we're starting. Get the poison ivy and the stuff down there in the.
As far as the saplings in that area, they're generally not much in that area, so you have to worry about harvesting out of that area.
There's a lot of ground cover, but
The line for that I started already in trees,
Make a motion to approve up to $4,200 for the goat clearing. For Brandon to figure out which company would best serves the village, as long as they meet the insurance needs of the village. And then have the village as a named insured for up to $1 million.
They should have $1 million of coverage and additional insurance on the village. I'm sure they have it. No big deal with it.
Second.
First and second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Doesn't matter, it passed.
Okay, right. I wanna know the vote though.
Oh.
And not just that.
All right, anything else before we go to closed session, guys?
Are you gonna get the big?
Oh, make a motion to go into closed session pursuant to Wisstat's 19.85, parent 1, parent E, delivering or negotiating the purchase of public funds, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require closed session. For Pineville Developers Agreement Amendment Addendum and Purchase Agreement for 223 and 235 Main Street. Roll call. Roll call.
Chris,
Frank Brown, aye.
Caleb Garn, aye.
Chris Dubak,
Myself, yes.
Donnie Kern, aye.
Josh Hector.
We are out of closed session at 8:42 PM.
Johnny Kern, I'd like to make a motion to amend the developer agreement with Pine Val, reflecting the tip dollars for grading and clearing.
It's not grading.
Well,
I know
the
it
tip,
says that, but
tip dollars for, in an amount of, that would not exceed $1,543,843.75.
Second.
The first and a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Caleb Garn make a motion, to, agree on the purchase agreement for plot 223 and 235 of Main Street to Voyager LLC.
Brandon Crowe, second.
The first and a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Josh Hector would like to make a motion to adjourn this.
I think you gotta pay the bills.
Well, after we pay the bills.
Brandon Crowe with the second. Further discussion?
I just
All
like
in favor?
under discussion, I just like to wish Josh Heck well and do his years and thank him
Oh,
for his
this is
time
the
on the
last
board.
board meeting?
Yes, it will be.
Meeting adjourned at 8:43 PM.